I was drafted by the Colts. And, my son's going to play in the NFL. I just was numb. I didn't know what to say. We were nasty, right, Tim? We were get after it nasty. In most locker rooms in the 80s and late 70s, just like pain pills were. I saw them handing out like candy, man, like piles of them. What's wrong with me? You were flatlined twice. You were resuscitated, cold blue, back to life twice.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green and I have ALS. This podcast is not about ALS or living with disabilities. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I am a father of 5 with a marriage that's lasted for over 33 years. I am a #1 New York Times best-selling author of 41 books, an NFL first-round pick with an 8-year career. I worked on TV for Fox Sports, Good Morning America, Court TV, and Extra. I've hosted BattleBots, A Current Affair, and Find My Family. And I am also a practicing attorney. In this podcast, we're diving into real-life stories. From triumphs to trials, we'll explore the extraordinary in the ordinary. Join me, Tim Green, and my son Troy each week for real conversations, laughter, and insights. Because life is a journey, and everyone's got a story. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Blaise Winter, welcome to our podcast. You have touched so many lives, including mine and Troy's. You leave in your wake a combination of inspiration and determination because of the life you have led and the obstacles you have overcome by sheer will. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
I am so glad to be with you. I really am. I haven't seen you guys in so long, and I'm Tim. You know how I feel about you, man. I love you. You're a brother of mine, and I talk about you all the time to the people in my life.
Your childhood was marred by bullying, but you also had an angel burning bright in the person of your mom. What were the conditions you were born with, and how did they affect your early childhood, if at all?
Yeah. I mean, growing up for me was very, very difficult because I was born, the way I put it, with a hole in my face. I didn't have any upper lip. I had no roof in the mouth. My teeth were growing inward and up into my jawbone. And, by the time I was ready to go to school, I really wasn't able to say many words to anybody. I would mumble, and I wore these metal devices in my mouth to try to create a roof, and they had sewn up my lip. And long story short, it was hell going through school. My mom would tell me that one day it'll be a blessing. That's how she was. Everything was optimism. Everything was God is with us. Everything is, there's no way the good creator creates garbage. He does not create garbage. So one day you're going to see it as a benefit, but you have to discover who you are. And I made school. I said very little in school. Now you can't shut me up, but I said very, very little in school because the repercussions from the student body were obvious. I was either lifted and thrown in a dumpster at lunchtime and told to not come into school by peers. I mean, it's even hard to this day to talk about, even though I'm in charge of it. It's still difficult to talk about because I can smell the garbage. I can smell the trash. I can hear the kids outside the dumpster laughing. I can hear people calling me names outside that dumpster. And I didn't believe in my mother. And Tim, Troy, my mother was an optimistic. Everything was there for a reason. And, I finally started to talk only after my mother put me on a football field. And people say, well, what? My mom drove me up to a field. I was in one of those moods. I never wanted to come out of my room. And she drove me up to a field and she pulled near the field. And I was about an eighth or, end of eighth grade or beginning of ninth or right around that age. And she pulls up near the field and there's kids playing football. And I'm like, what are we doing here? That's how I spoke. What are we doing here? And mom would say, it's time for you to help yourself. And my response was, I just want to go home. I just leave me alone. I want to go home. You don't understand what it's like to be me. You don't understand what it's like to be me. And my mom reached over my lap, opened the door, pushed it open. The coach was about to come to the door and say, hey, come on, Blaise. We got to get a helmet and uniform for you. And I looked at my mom with, I hate you. I hate everything about you. You don't understand. You're not me. And my mom said, with a smile, go find out who you are, and I'll be here when you're done. And I went out to the field, and my life forever changed. Not on day one, not on day 2 or 3, not even on day 10 or 20. But eventually I gained respect with that helmet and shoulder pads, the same way, Tim, you did. The same way you did. And people started to understand that I don't have to say very much. And you imagine if most of the young people on this earth would now be taught that lesson. Don't say a word. Just show me what you stand for. Just show me what you stand for, and everything will be all right. And that's the most beautiful part of coming out of an election where we have a new president is, hey man, just show me what you stand for. I'm sick and tired of hearing you talk about promises. So for me, all right, I'll show you what I stand for. Number one, I'm worth something. Number two, I'm going to be a hell of a football player. And at the end of high school, my coach, who I thought admired me, said, it's time to get realistic. And he even drew out a piece of paper. I wish I had that paper. I wish I had that paper. He drew a bell curve on a piece of paper. And says to me, yeah, you don't understand. I know you want to play D1, and I know you're going around the school telling people in 12th grade, I'm ready to go to college. I'm going to be a pro football player. But Blaise, tell me, who's recruiting you? And my response to the coach was, nobody. Why? And he said, you don't fit in there. That's why. And I said, I don't fit in what? Look, I've always been like a father to you, right? And the peers are one thing. Kids your own age are one thing. But to have the adult population also cast judgment on you as being unable to reach a certain height is devastating. And then when it comes from somebody you admire, it's even more harmful. And I went home and I just, I crashed and I burned. And my mom told me a crashing and burning in my house in tears and misery and being torn emotionally apart. And she said, what happened? How was the meeting with coach? Is he going to help you find a home, a college to play for? And I said, no. He told me to get realistic. Hey, Tim, why don't you get realistic? Hey, Troy, why don't you get realistic? Hey, everybody out there who has difficulty, hey, man, why don't you just get your own grave, jump in it, and get realistic? I mean, it gets my hair standing up because I don't believe in that shit. I don't believe in that shit. I never will.
He should have never doubted you. When you were dealing with the bullies in school, did you ever try to go to your teachers or principal?
I went to my teachers for guidance. for trust. The people I gain a certain degree of clout with, like a coach. You know, I mean, if you fast forward, George O'Leary was what he said is what he did. What he did is what he said. There wasn't any indirect bullshit with George O'Leary. It was always, hey man, in your face. You don't like it, tough shit. But here's what you're going to do to be great. And he never abandoned me. He never abandoned you. He never abandoned Tim Green Jamie or Billy or any of us that he put his heart and soul into. And he built men. He built men at the toughest times in their lives. So yeah, you go to your coaches, you go to your teachers, and you expect them to give you support, and honesty. Honesty.
Would you get so, Coach? When you were getting whatever picked on, bullied at school, you said adults. Were the teachers were adults like in on it, or you're just saying they would just put limits on you because they heard you sounded different?
I think it was a combination of leave the poor kid alone. I mean, it's real easy to go with the front runner. It's real easy to say, Tim, you no longer belong. Get to the end of the line. It's real easy to say, Billy, do this. Hey, other players. But the great leaders, they see the invisible parts of you that mean in the long run the most. The heart and soul. The heart and soul, the mind, the body, the determination. And I'm forever grateful to those people. I didn't come to this point in my life, and I'm certainly not angry for a lot of people that say you're so intense. This is how I've always been, right, Tim Green? I've always been this way. The only difference is I say a lot more now, and that, like Billy Pendock will say, man, you don't shut up. And I have a lot to say when it comes to knowing what it takes to take adversity and turn it into what my mother said, a blessing. And that's powerful.
Earlier, you mentioned your mom taking you to football.
My mom got involved with almost anything that I asked her to. And if she drove me to the colleges, she drove me up to Syracuse where I was turned down 3 times. 3 times. And I remember the building, it's a faculty building. The third time, sitting down with the coach and hearing him say, I was so close to defying the odds. I mean, this has been a life of defying the odds. There is no fibbing or stretching the truth. You're looking at a true life Rocky. I have defied the odds, and I'm proud of it. And I was turned down 3 times, Tim, you know this, at Syracuse, and I went all the way home crying. But Miss Pomzo and a few others remembered me. And I kept pounding on a door, and they finally let me walk on and be a part of it, where then George O'Leary took over and said, you can be something. And I had not heard that from many people in my life other than my mother and my brother and my great-grandma. You remember my great-grandma, Tim. I mean, she was the ultimate spirit, angel on earth.
Did your mom get involved when you were getting picked on at school?
To a certain point. Yeah, to a certain point, she took me away from what others thought would be safe and secure. She literally walked into a school, my middle school, and moved me from one side of the hallway to the other in the middle of the day. I mean, it was so embarrassing because I was in a class of special ed because they thought, that's the safest place for him. And it wasn't about safety. When you're in education, it's about what? Discovery. It ain't about being safe. It's about discovering something in yourself. And my mom brought me over to the other side of the hallway and went in the classroom. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And everybody's like, in the middle of listening to the teacher, and the teacher says, "Mrs. Winter, what can I do for you? We're in class." And my mom said, "You belong in here." And I pulled on her. Then she looked at the teacher. She said out loud, "He belongs in here. There's nothing wrong with him. God made him just like everybody else." And I found the scene in there, and they eventually left me in there. So yeah, she got involved a little bit here and there in a way that
She
I'll never
sounds
forget.
she
So
sounds like a fighter.
she was an amazing lady, and she deserved more from me later on in my life for sure. Yeah,
And Blaise, I mean, for people who don't know you or know your story, I mean, you're a massive guy and extremely intense. I'm sure people can hear and can tell. And on the football field, known to be very violent. So it's hard for me to even imagine you getting picked on. Were you not as big growing up, or were you just timid, or was it older kids?
I was quiet. You know, I wasn't relying on what a lot of other people that were smooth and pretty like you rely on. And I'm not putting anybody down, but you and Tim are beautiful people. They rely on looks and speech, and maybe they're athletic superstars. I was a grunt. I'm a fight out wheel warrior. I'm a bloody dude that comes home, and I'm happy to have protected my wife and kids, and I don't need much more. And so I think people talk their way through things, and I didn't have that luxury to the degree that I felt I could slip through. There was only one thing I could rely upon, and that was action. Action was the only thing because I was mobile. I was energetic. And two, in this current day and age, the reason people ask me, why don't you speak more and do more motivational speeches? Because I'm sent lists of what not to say, and passion scares the hell out of people. And I don't understand why. They want politically correct. Well, I'd rather die and not be. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be honest and true about my efforts. Um, and if I believe in the efforts and I see that inside myself and I know what's in me and what caused me to fight through certain barriers, I just let it out my mouth now. And people say you're screaming, you're yelling. I get very excited about seeing you and Tim. I love my brothers, man. I love them deeply because we were on this journey, Tim, together. Yeah, we were. And we're still fighting, and we will be till the day we leave this earth. So it's it's a big journey.
When did you start dreaming about playing in the NFL?
Probably just like you in grade school, and then you are sort of in elementary. It's there, and then it leaves you, and then you look at a girl. You're all about. Oh, I like to have her, and that leaves you. Then you go back to. Oh, I want to be a basketball player. Oh, that leaves you. Oh, I want to run track. I mean, you have all these thoughts growing up, and you should. You should. But football's been in and out of my mind since I remember, and then it never left my mind. By the time I was a junior, senior in high school, it was like, man, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
When did you begin playing?
I started playing football when I was, oh man, sixth or seventh grade. I'm not sure what age that is, but middle school.
Coach, when you were playing, I mean, obviously you ended up you end up achieving your dream, making it to the NFL. But when you were in middle school, high school, it sounds like you kind of got your identity somewhat through the game, which I think everybody does to a degree. But did something happen one day? You said it wasn't on day one or day two or day 40. Did you have like a play or a practice, or did your coach say something that flipped it for you, where you're like, you finally got that feeling?
No, I was ready to bust out from the the prison I was in. I built the prison. I'm the one who built it. I was ready to bust out of it. As I would put up one more brick, my mom would tear it down, and she would bring joy and peace to my rather troubled heart. She would take me to a museum in the inner city. She would take me to opera. She would take me to theater to see grandma play on stage in the Broadway. I mean, I was raised around Broadway and art and beauty. And she would distract me. How dare she? She would just distract me with these things. And but again, alone at night, laid in bed, you know, you have a tendency to reflect. Unfortunately, I'm half empty. I think it's a society. In society, we still do that. What will be the trouble of the new president? What will be the downside? I mean, it's just constant half empty when really it should be what, Tim? Half full. It should be, hey, man, what can I get done? And why don't we support this until it goes awry? So, um, I mean, to think that I've done over 3,000 talks. I was honored by the Kennedy Center. I've traveled this country and people have asked me to open my mouth and share my heart up to only the last 2 years ago. It's rather amazing what the American dream is, isn't it, Tim? It's rather amazing.
Were you a fan of any particular football team as a kid?
I guess the Purple People Eaters were someone that I somewhat loved seeing them play with, the ice coming out of their mouth in so many words from the bitter cold weather and then later on it was the New York Jets and the sack has changed with Gastineau and I always thought, man, there's somebody who actually enjoys the game and shows it. And some people would say that that's showboating. You can tell the difference between showboating and true joy. And I'm going to play with true joy and excitement because I loved it so much. I cared about it so much. Um, so, I, I had to learn to balance it a little bit later on in my career because you realize all these players that I used to admire, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Steel Curtain, they all get older and they have to have something more. And you also taught me that, Tim. I mean, to be really honest, you also taught me that. You're a well balanced human being at college. I mean, you really were. I mean, you could have got away with just looking pretty and have everybody look at you because you were like stunning. You know what I mean? And if I'm talking about that age, and you were working your ass off to be an All-American in school. You were working your butt off to be an amazing athlete, and look what you've done with your life. Look at what the family around you that is inspired by you. Look at not because of your ailment, and that's not you. That's just something you're going through. What you are is deep inside, your identity, and same with me. But we learn from one another. Man, I learned a lot from you, um, uh, because I'm an observer, and I saw things. And later on, you tell people in life, I hope you go to somebody as you get older and say, hey, Troy, thanks a lot for being there for me at UCF. Remember that? Troy, you remember those days.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, you're thankful that there are people like Billy Pendot, who's been a brother of mine, Tim, as you know, for years, man. I mean, he'll just laugh with me because he has a great way to make me laugh. And so I'm very blessed to have people that have inspired me and define life like Tim Green has. And I mean that, sir, sincerely, Tim, because I love you deeply, man. You're a remarkable human being. I love your books. I love what you have persuaded me to study and learn. Even my musician son, Blaise Winter, that'll be on your show one day, even he has taken up, listen to this, writing poetry because he learned to read your books and then go and say, I like writing. And that's an inspiration. That's what you want for your kids and the people in your lives that you love so much, to have a balanced life.
Did you ever play any other sports in high school?
I was told after my junior year of high school, because I followed the lead of others, you go from football to basketball. So I followed the lead. I said, well, I want to play more sports. I'd rather play sports than go home and get my ass beat. So I play other sports. I like sports, and people look at me, and I like the feeling of doing things. So basketball was there, but then my basketball coach told me, you know what? I believe you should try another sport. I really believe you would do well in wrestling. And I'm like, you don't want me on your team? I really believe you'd be better on a wrestling mat. Well, you don't like me? No, I like you enough to tell you the truth. You're not a very good basketball player. The only thing you set here in this school, true story, is keys. What? Keys. Yeah, I know what they are. What do you mean? How many you have this year? 9. 9 technical fouls. You can't play basketball like that. And I took a lot of pride in rebounding and throwing elbows. And he was right. I ended up my senior year wrestling. Ended up coming up to Syracuse to wrestling in state and placed 5th at heavyweight with 1 year of wrestling. He was right. It was my sport. And if I had it all over to do, I'd be in MMA without question. I'd be in mixed martial arts for sure. Yeah, great sport.
Did you have a coach who was special to you, someone who believed in you and inspired you?
Well, yeah, without question, George O'Leary um, became the father that I had a father, but I never really saw him. And when I saw him, I was scared of him. O'Leary, I was scared of at times, but I really looked up to him. I really, really did. Even though he was tough and hard nosed and never really gave us much of a break, he taught us right from wrong and he held us accountable. And we laughed, we cried, I coached for him, I played for him. He came to save my career at the Chargers, as you know, Tim, by being the D line coach for the Chargers. And we had 51 of 54 sacks from the defensive line in 1992. 51 of 54 came from the front four. And I was a starter with that team in 1992. And George O'Leary, believe it or not, Jim Tressel, very important to my life. Believe it or not, Mark D'Antonio with Michigan State. Later in my life, I met him. Pat Narduzzi with Pittsburgh. These are amazing, powerful men that had a major impact on my life. And I'm mentioning football, but obviously my roots in martial arts lead me to my senseis. Arsenio Vecchiola in Oceanside, California is beyond words. He's just a rock in my life. And there's many others. Great Blaise coached me at Green Bay. Great Blaise was a changer of direction because I was heading down, and he saw it and he saved me. So there's been so many, but those are just a few, and I'm missing a bunch.
Did you have any coaches that supported you when you were young?
I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be disrespectful. Obviously, um, the fathers that were coaching were doing it a lot of times for obviously the right reason. I mean, you're just a young kid sliding down the side of a hill on a piece of cardboard, and they want you to come, pay attention to practice. So, I mean, I'm not going to be so judgmental to them. My high school coach, all I wanted was from my high school coach um, an apology of some sort for judging me wrong. And when I was inducted into the Rockland, New York State Hall of Fame, he presented the trophy to me. And on the way up to the stage, um, I'll never forget, he whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry I misunderstood you." And it meant the world to me. And I'm glad I had that closure with him because I was able to turn around and say to him, "Joe Hyams, don't worry about it. Everything worked out well. I needed your challenge." And that's a powerful moment because it also proves the fact that adversity is a blessing. Well, you have to have closure. You have to have an endpoint. You have to finish the race to be able to say to somebody who doesn't believe adversity is a blessing, you need to finish. Otherwise, you can't say anything to those people. I mean, I wish people understand that. And it's like my son, who's a musician, Blaise Winter. If you don't finish this race, um, everyone will say, "See, I told you, music is a tough profession." Oh, yeah, he lives in a van and he's 28 and he won't take a dime from his father. And all he wants to do is sing and inspire. And I've taught him my whole life adversity is a blessing. Don't you dare quit because you'll have the last word.
Did you have any kind of relationship with your father at that time?
He worked a lot through my childhood, and we were fortunate. We felt about that. Then in high school, he worked, so he never really even saw a game. In college, he really never went out of his way to come up and see me play. And Tim, you remember, you really never saw my father. You saw my mother all the time, but not my father. I believe one of the best conversations I ever had with my father was a handful of days before he died, where there was coming to terms that I could have been a better son. I could have comforted you more. Because he was a miserable man. He's really a miserable human being. And he worked and he provided for his family and he made life tough. But you have to understand he was brought to this country on the bottom of a boat. He was separated from his 8 brothers and sisters for 2 years. And he revisited that when he landed in the harbor in New York. His 8 brothers and sisters, after 2 years of being taken away from them. And you start to learn these things later on. So now you can have a conversation with the man and understand what his fear and miseries are. And a lot of times we don't even think about those things as a child. We just think about, what about me? Why don't you love me? He was loving me by working every day, and he never abandoned his family. Never. He just didn't know how to talk to them. He just didn't know how to tell somebody to stop it without pushing you or punching you. And I can only imagine it was partially from the journey that he was on. I mean, we're so judgmental, aren't we, Tim and Troy? We're so damn judgmental of everything. Every newscast, every freaking show, it is out of control. And to have that conversation with my father at the end of his life and to understand him more because I did the research by then, I was so thankful that we left in peace. And that was very important. It is important for us to reinitiate to to start a fire when it comes to family. We've got to get that thing burning well again in our society. Family is important. And you guys have the epitome of one of the best families I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the love, oh my, it brings tears to my eyes. Your grandchildren, your love, the nucleus of your family. Uh, I mean, it's just, it's an amazing thing to, for my wife and I to copy and to look at. And we hope that you guys draw strength from us as well as we draw strength from you because my sons hear about Tim Green quite often. And it's funny. They very seldom hear about Tim Green with ALS. I guess that's a trait that, or a habit that was instilled by my mother. I'm not Blaise Winter with a hole in his face. I'm Blaise Winter. And I'm so blessed to be on the show.
Coach, you know a story I heard about? I heard a lot of stories from my dad about you, the hard work and the ferocity and all that. But you know, there was a story. So obviously, you and my dad were teammates at Syracuse, and that's where my parents met. And my mom tells this story that she was in a class waiting. The professor was late, and the professor rode into the class on the back of your motorcycle. Is that a true story?
Yeah, there's some bizarre stories that are. Yeah, that's the 4 years at SU with Tim Green and Billy and the team, coached by George O'Leary. There was some amazing, intense moments, and there was some rather "what the hell is that" moment. And I mean, it didn't last very long because uh, most of the time those things were what hand-me-downs. Remember that van, Tim? The van? And Billy would what? Say from Manly Fieldhouse, everybody jump in, man. We're going to go have dinner. We're going to be late. And everybody would start jumping in my van. And it was an old piece of garbage that my brother, uh, kept running. And, the seat was bolted to the frame. There was holes in the floor where you literally throw trash out, and not worry about it. Ha ha ha. And I mean, it was so we're riding down the road, and Tim's in that car. I know he's in that van, and he's one of 21 football players in a van, assholes at elbows, pressed against glass. That's really not a beautiful thing to see. And Billy was the initiator of this, like sitting in the passenger seat. Come on, everybody, get on, get in. We can fit a few more. And I'm like, no, man, you're going to break my van. My van is going to break. Let's get out of here. And Tim, no, it'll be all right. Or Jamie, it'll be all right. We'll get it all in there. And it was a motorcycle, a van, a lot of crazy stuff. I went through how many roommates in 4 years at Syracuse? 5. I had John Worth eating a bologna sandwich on his tummy, and I'm like, what are you doing? And, big old linemen. Old linemen are good people, but I won't say anymore. And then I had another roommate who was a walk-on, and he Coughlin. He threw all the furniture out the window. I came in the skytop apartments, and all the furniture was in the backyard. Tim, it was all in the backyard. A pile of furniture. I mean, what are you doing? And he says to me, I don't like the furniture. The house has nothing in it now, man, and that's not our furniture. Well, we'll find some other furniture. And he brought in one of those beanbag chairs. Yeah, like 4 or 5. What do too much pot, too much something. Good times though. Good times.
Were you inspired by any books or movies? Knowing you, I'm thinking Rocky with Sylvester Stallone.
Of course. Yeah, my mom was if it wasn't Broadway, it was movies. And she would take us to movies quite often. And movies can be very inspiring, empowering, and to some young people, they're very realistic. And Rocky was. I mean, he was, Tim. Troy, you know what I'm saying? If you ever saw that movie,
For sure.
it was uh, a guy who wasn't maybe real bright, who just had a simple life, wanted simple things, and uh, found a little bit of love and found a place he could sort of divide himself from others in a ring. And my ring was a football field. And I could identify with that. And I'm forever grateful to the time and effort put into that movie by him, because he really um, did a lot with very, very little in, and usually in Hollywood, that's not the case. Usually they need an awful lot to do very little. So it was inspiring to me and many others. And, you know, I'm, do I watch it? People have asked me, do you watch it? And no, I leave that alone. It has a special place in my life, and I sort of put it on a shelf. So
Were you a standout in high school football? Were you getting recruited by anyone else?
I wasn't recruited by anybody. And for people that say, yeah, you were at Syracuse, I got letters and I went up and visited. Why? It was 3 hours from home. People don't understand. I was turned down 3 times at SU. I don't even know, Tim, if you know that. I was turned down. I mean, you can ask my buddy who lives in New York, Mike Delapizzi, who was a coach and teacher at Nanuet. He remembers the tears. The third time, I thought, I'm going to do it. And junior college letters, and I mean, no, I wasn't recruited. I mean, that's where you and Billy and others had great advantage. But it was also a inspiration to me, or a tool for me to use, because I could be just as good as you, Tim. I could be just as good as Jamie. Now, in the long run, was I? No, we all had our place. The four-wheel drive had its place because of each individual, but that unit was special. So I don't want to get ahead of the story, but I I get very angry, and maybe I shouldn't, but I really, really feel Tim Green, Jamie Kimmel, Bill Pendock, and Blaise Winter should be somewhere on a wall at SU. I do. I do believe we were one of the best, if not the best, defensive lines that ever played. 4 kids from New York, coached by George O'Leary. I don't know if that'll ever happen again.
I was told that you were tall and skinny when you first arrived at Syracuse. You were massive when I arrived 2 years later. I know I put 25 pounds of muscle on under the tutelage of our strength coach, Mike Wojcik. Did you ever use steroids at Syracuse or at any time in your lengthy career? I have to add, they weren't even banned back then. I stayed away from them because I was scared of the long-term health effects, but I know I was in the minority.
Mike Wolfsit taught me everything, as he did probably Tim, you, and the rest of us. He was he was a special person in that room. And to come in at 210 and leave at about 260, 65, as you know, for me, it was a daily job. Everyone laughed at my dozen eggs every morning and a gallon of milk every day. And people say, oh, that's not I ask the people that know me, a gallon of milk every day and dozen eggs every morning. That was just a baseline of my increasing the caloric intake in my life. Even though later on you find out it's wrong, not quite the right types of foods in that amount, in those amounts, but Mike Wolfsit was special. The ability to develop myself for the first time. I don't want to take anything away from my mentor in high school, who really introduced me to weightlifting, Jose St. Victor. But Mike was really the one who, put some heat underneath and making it clear that you want to be something good in football, you better develop in this room, right, Tim? I mean, it was a must. And for some of us, we lived in there. We lived in there, and I loved it. I loved it. As far as the NFL, it was continuation. Uh, being with Tom Stepanczyk at the Indianapolis Colts, one of the best strength coaches that anybody could ever have, was a continuation of Mike Wilson. And you asked a question that I don't know if I've ever answered, but I'm going to answer it honestly on your show. I was in turmoil over if I don't get my shoulder right from the surgery, and I had just been traded from San Diego to Green Bay, and they don't even know about the surgery. They didn't even know about it. And I'm not something when I arrive, they're going to cut me or tell me to go home right away. And at that point, I made a decision. And I recovered more rapidly with the use of steroids for about a year and 6 months. And when I arrived and made the Green Bay team, I got off of all those things. And am I upset with myself? No, I'm not. I knew going in that there was a certain degree of knowledge of what I was doing.
Did you
So
at that point, coach, they weren't even banned, right?
no, they were not. Everybody was
So
usually a year in, a year out.
that's my question is I remember I asked my dad a couple of times why he didn't use steroids, and he said he was like pre-med, and so he was nervous about the side effects that were going to come with it. What kept you, I guess, I totally understand. I mean, not just saying because you're here. If your career's on the line and you can take steroids to keep that going, the surgery and all that, that makes a lot of sense. What stopped you from doing it sooner, or beyond
Well,
that point?
the plan that I went into the whole thing with, complete honesty with my wife, was driven by the fact that I have this. I had a trim clavicle. I was laid up for weeks. When I started lifting, yes, I'm going to get back to where I was, but I needed to accelerate. And it was a decision made prior to even the start that, hey, there's going to be an endpoint here. This is not a continued thing because I was ashamed of it, but I made a decision that, am I ashamed of it? Like I said, I battle with it because I'm high on morals. I'm high on doing things right. I'm not a drinker. I'm not a smoker. I don't do any of those things. And this is a point in my life where I knew that I needed to accelerate something to stand the chance to make this roster and look halfway decent in 1988. And but then people say, well, you never fail any test. No, I never failed any test because I was off of it um, within a year.
Got it.
It's, I mean, your show, I'd rather die with honesty than try to fudge anything. I have scars all over my body, as Tim does, and I took things to access my, to accelerate my repair and my muscle tissue growth. And would I do it all over again? I can't answer that because I'm not in that situation. But I did it at a time of feeling I want to continue to do this. I want to continue to play. Um, I'd have enough months. I'd have enough months to get myself back. And we all know it does accelerate certain things fast. I saw it with people around me. Tim did. You saw it with the people around you. Well, you did. I mean, it was handy in most locker rooms in the 80s and late 70s, just like pain pills were. I saw them handed out like candy, man, like piles of them, handfuls. And so you make decisions and you face your God and you ask for forgiveness or guidance. And that's what that journey was.
I have to ask you, where did you get the idea for our defensive line to be called four-wheel drive? And can you explain to listeners who are not up on their Syracuse University football lore?
The guy really behind this, as you know, was Billy Pendock, all of us. I mean, it was, but I think it was spearheaded by Bill Pendock with his truck. He had an older pickup truck. Um, and we were growing in confidence together. And, um, uh, the hats on the bus, we wore these, I don't know, what are they called? These caps. And nobody ever sat in our seats. And we sit a certain place, we do certain things, we led the team, we took care of business, we told people to shut up when they needed to shut up, we told people to get off the ground when they needed to get off the ground, and it was our team. And we were encouraged by George O'Leary to understand it was our team, that they will follow you. Did he like the four-wheel drive a name or idea? Not necessarily, because he was worried about it. He was worried about it getting into our head that we're bigger than we really are, and we would stop working as hard. He was worried about it becoming a distraction when we were on the rise in '83, and we had people like Oliver Luck come in and Doug Flutie come in from BC and from Flutie from BC and Oliver Luck from West Virginia, and he just sort of like, hey man, you're on the cover of the program. You understand what you've done. I remember that meeting. I mean, you're on the cover of the program before we play the Heisman dude. Doug Flutie, you're on the cover. You understand what you did. Coach, we're all right, man. We'll get it done. No, man, you are the center of attention now. You really want that. You want to make it harder on yourself. You don't think they'll know. And he went on, and we're like, we'll get it done. I I do remember though, as we high fived over Flutie's body or others' body together, we would high five. All of us would wait. So Tim made a sack. The three of us, Jamie, Billy, and I, would come in late, and we would high five over the quarterback's body that was about to get off the ground. And at that moment, we were like, I can't talk for the other three, but I know I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go off the field this way. I'm not going near O'Leary. I'm not going near the headphones or, hey, he wants to talk to us if he was up in the booth. So it was really fun because we took a lot of pride in it. I think at first it was just a funny thing, a little joke that might last for a week or two, but it really turned into a staple. And we took a lot of pride in it, a lot of pride in it. We were nasty, right, Tim? We were get after it nasty. And it wasn't a selfish group. Were there differences? Tim, you know there was, and Billy knows there was, and um, but we all knew how to put it aside or use it as motivation on a Saturday afternoon, and that was really important. How to keep everything going. I mean, you talk to the NFL teams that have names, the Steel Curtain with Pittsburgh, the Purple People Eaters, even and SAT has changed, and others. I mean, yeah, there's going to be friction, but the friction indirectly becomes some sort of motivation for the other guy. If Tim wasn't seeing eye to eye with Jamie and then Dame, so be it, man. It's going to be motivation. They're both highly competitive people, and we're in the middle saying, "Go, let them do it, do their stuff." And some were happy, some were sad, some were mad, some were glad. But hey, man, it's Saturday. It's Saturday. You see that quarterback over there? Oh man, I hope he has his coffin ready. I hope he has his. I mean, it was going to be a hunt. The hunt was on, right, Tim? It was awesome. It was awesome, and I want it to be recognized at Syracuse. And like Billy said, it probably never will, but why not try?
Those were fun times. Your career didn't end with four-wheel drive, though. You ended up being drafted in the second round of the NFL by the Indianapolis Colts. Describe that day to us. Where were you? Who were you with? Was this the answer to your prayers? And what did you do to celebrate?
Uh, I was with family on draft day. First of all, the buildup was, we had Kyles and Marciano as attorneys, agents, as many other players did through the years. They were doing the business behind the scenes, and I was home with my family. Um, my dad went to work, and mom was there, and we had the phone that had a cord that would go into a wall. I know, isn't it amazing? A phone that had a cord that go into the phone and then into the wall, and you couldn't go very far with it. And that phone was in the kitchen. And I was hanging out with family, and the first call I got on that day in 1984, the draft day, was early, early. Who wants me this early when my agents told me that you'll go in the maybe fourth round? Why? Who's calling this early? It was the Cowboys, and they basically said, "Hey, is this where you'll be?" Yeah, of course. And all right, I'll just hang tight. Oh yeah, yeah, I will. And I remember I was helping my brother put a new roof on the house. We had a little tiny dilapidated house outside of New York City in Rockland County, and I was pounding nails and putting on a new roof with my brother, Lance. And Mom was in charge of letting me know if the phone would ring. And so the Cowboys thing went by, and then I think it was the Raiders. And And I'm like, now after two, I'm a little more relaxed because I'm like, hey, man, they're going to call me, the third, fourth, fifth round, whatever. And there was another call. I wonder who this one is. And it was the Colts. We've chosen you in the 35th pick in the second round. What? What? Are you sure? Me? And I didn't say that. I just said, all right, great. We'll be in touch with you and your attorney about fly you out, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, what? And I remember putting the phone down and who was around you? Brother standing there and mom. And they're looking like, 3 feet from my face. What? What is it? What? I was drafted by the Colts. And, my son's going to play in the NFL? I just was numb. I didn't know what to say. I mean, that feeling, right, Tim? It's an amazing, powerful trip that, has started years earlier. And maybe I had too much on it. Maybe a guy like Tim had the right approach. I have this, I have that, I have this, I have that, I have all these things. So I'm ready either way. If you wanted to play, you got to play. He got drafted early, awesome. But he had plans. I'm like, I'm a football player. Now people say, well, what were your backup plans? I had none. I had zero. I would work with my brother in landscaping. I would go back to shoveling, raking, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I had no other plan. Even if people like Tim taught me, have different plans, have different approaches, a different vision, it just wasn't. It wasn't part of the drive. I had to put everything into being a football player to be one. I felt.
It must have been a really special moment for your mom, though, coming from the walking across the hallway and taking you to the football practice and thinking of that. It's something that now that I have kids, coach, like, and I have, when I have moments that like my kids accomplish something and I get like such happiness, such joy, I think about stuff like with my parents and the appreciation for my parents and things that you don't realize when you're growing up. So now looking back on it, like thinking about that moment, obviously I never met your mom, but she sounds like a really special woman, and having how hard she fought for you and pushed for you and advocated for you. And then it all came true, right? I mean, second round in the NFL is a huge deal.
And to have that chance to step on a field with elite and really have somebody like Leo Wisniewski. Remember him, Tim? Leo Wisniewski, a nose guard for the Colts, the team that drafted me, tell me, hey, man, you're here. Stop dreaming. And I'm like, yeah, all right, you're here. You're one of us. Now, make sure you focus on what you have to do. And yeah. And then Donnell Thompson, may he rest in peace, who recently passed away, was like, all that stuff with your hands, why don't you keep it to yourself? You haven't made the team yet. And I remember being like, what? You haven't made the team yet. I will concentrate on making the team and keep the things that you're good at to yourself. And I'm like, wow, what an asshole. But I understood within hours, years later, man, he was looking out after me. Donnell Thompson was an amazing human being. He was a great football player. And I had a few guys that are the same thing that Tim had that would look out after us. And the funny part of the whole thing is when I landed in the Colts and I turned around, who's there? Dave Hammer. Remember, Tim? Dave Hammer, the trainer. Dave, not Dunlow, Dave Hammer. He was just a trainer. And then all the veterans like Ben Ott and others, Ray Donaldson, a Hall of Fame center. Ray Donaldson were like, he brought his trainer with him. And They would razz me the whole year. Like, you have your own trainer, man. And it was just an amazing moment. And to start 16 games as a rookie, 15 actually. I was hurt one, and play on those fields. Oh, that was riveting, man. It was just life changing. And the last game of the year, who do we play? The Patriots. It was my last game, but you know what it is, Tim. When you're in your last game of your rookie year, you feel like you've lived through a marathon of war. I mean, you feel like, oh, this goes on forever, man. I mean, you feel this. College, all right. Oh man, 11 games. Oh boy, that's a long time. You're playing a lot more games, and you're like, holy cow, how do they do this? And I remember I was just mentally worn out. My body was beat up, and my last game. Who do I have to face, Tim? You remember? Brian Holloway and John Hanna. Brian Holloway and John Hanna, my rookie year, my last game, two All-Pro Hall of Famers, and I'm like, oh my Lord, I'm just holding on for dear life. And now the game's over. I don't know if we win or lose. I'm relieved that I made it through my rookie year. I started every game that I was on the field. I made it, and who comes toward me? John Hanna. He's coming toward. I'm going to walk out toward him also. I'm shake his hand, and he just simply puts his hand on my shoulder pad. And he says, "You're going to be all right. Keep working hard." And I'll never forget that coming from. I mean, Tim. That dude was a real warrior. That dude was blood, sweat, and tears. And he was in the last few years of his career. And eventually, Brian Holloway became a great friend of mine on the circuit, a motivational circuit. He's still out there doing speeches. He's remarkable. Wow, what a journey. What a journey. Amazing.
Please describe your relationship with your older brother. I know he was important to you.
My older brother, Lance, would protect me in high school. No, yeah, high school. We finally would enter high school. He would be in 11th grade. I would be in ninth grade. I was going through hard times. He knew it. He would always protect me. So we would eat lunch outside, even in winter, underneath the overhang in the back of the school. And sometimes we would sneak in and have lunch in the art room because he actually loved art and he knew the teacher, so they would let us sneak into the lunchroom. I mean, the art room to eat. And people would say, "Well, why are you eating? Why didn't you go to the lunchroom to eat?" Because he knew I would be harassed. He knew I would be persecuted for who I was. Even though I had started playing ball, I didn't generate a name for myself or respect coming from many other people other than my teammates. And my brother would protect me and just simply guide me to my class and say, "I'll see you later after school," whatever, and that's how our relationship was until the times turned a little bit into, I becoming a respected football player and athlete at the school in my later years. Obviously, he left school and he went into construction, and I went to Syracuse, which was very hard on him because we were inseparable. He was. I looked up to him, and later he would look up to me, and um, he was proud of me in college. but he was also very concerned about handling the work without being there. So every time I had free, I would go home and work with him, the landscape type business. And when I was drafted, I told him I'm going to set him up. I bought him a pickup truck, a dump truck, a backhoe, and an excavator with all my signing bonus. And I said, here, this is for you. And he would say, hey, you don't have to do that. No, I do, because I wouldn't be here without you. So we were very, very tight. And then times turned. We weren't used to having females in our lives. Now, this is very difficult to talk about. We weren't used to that. I had no girlfriend all the way through high school or even college. I didn't know how to talk to girls. A lot of them would say, are you retarded? When they looked at me. It was horrible, painful, because I was a guy who wanted to associate and have friendships with girls. And it wasn't going to happen. So when girls came into our lives, it was very awkward because we were inseparable and we didn't need anybody else. And eventually now, who's the priority? The people we love that we eventually would what? Marry. It's a strange thing to explain, but the challenge in my life caused me to lean on my mother and father. My mother and brother. I'm sorry, my mother and brother, and it forced my mother and brother to not have much of a life. My mother didn't have much of a life with her husband, and my brother was wrapped up in making sure I was all right. So, how do you handle that? Very, very hard. It's your listeners won't understand it. I don't believe they will. It's weird that it's normal. Yeah, but it wasn't normal. It was very damaging because now what? We're serving these women that we love. Well, you're still going to help me. No, I'm pursuing this. And it becomes very, you have to sit down and have conversations, and we never did. He eventually would pass away with melanoma. I wanted to see him, but his wife would not let me. It was painful. And she doesn't know me. And that's the saddest part, because when I went back to Rockland County, when I went back to my high school, the first person to write me on my phone was my wife's, my brother's wife, and she doesn't like me. She thinks I was the most damaging, hurtful person, and she did not know our lives. She didn't know my life, and she judges me because of the pain that my brother went through. Well, on the other side of it, I went through too.
What was it? And I might be getting too personal, but what was she frustrated about? Your brother's pain from you guys going your separate ways?
When I'm not around, and I became the superstar in so many words of the family, and I'm never around because I'm committed to football and girlfriend to be wife. The translation of why to her, my brother's girlfriend to be wife, the translation is there's some things lost. There's a lot of anger and hurt, and it comes into that translation because my brother's a very short-tempered human being. When he's pissed, and everyone knows. And he was mad because he felt I turned my back on him and mom. I simply pursued my life, and we lost communication for years. And as a person coming into the family that says, "Oh, you have a brother," it's not always good conversation when you're not there to help guide it along. So she saw me as a backstabber, a person who abandoned the family. And uh, I tell my wife to this day, I should have I should have taken the high road, been above it all, and simply found a way to sit down with all of them and communicate around them and shut the door, because I didn't like their judgment of me.
Did your
And
did your did your
so
brother and mom feel the same way, or did they understand?
my mom, as you both know, would by now is a forgiver. Nothing's going to be carried on. Um, According to my father, in the last few days of his life, mom was very hurt. And I said, I imagine so, and I'm forever sorry about that. My mom had passed away a few years earlier than my father, um, in a coma because she decided not to take her medicines for diabetes, and you can't do that. And so my father told me that your absence really hurts your mother a lot, and he still went on to say, you know what good came out of it though, your absence. I said, I hope there was. I got my wife back. I said, your life? No, my wife. I can never get near my wife with you and your brother around. She was so focused on you and your brother Lance. I was so lonely. That's why a lot of times I never came out of my room on the times that I was home. I said, that's a shame. But when this all happened, your mom and I traveled all over the country for months. We made love together that we had not made in years. And he said that you gave me my wife back. I never wanted to lose your mom. I loved her deeply. And I said, I never knew this. I'm sorry. And he says, maybe God has a plan. And in the long run, I got my wife back. And that was important to him. And it made me feel a little bit better that they had a lot of time together that they did not have when we were all in the house together.
So when you got drafted, I don't even understand how they could. So when you got drafted, how could you still be around? I mean, I don't get it.
Um,
Are they
every
expecting
time there
financial?
was a holiday, go home. Every time there was a break, go home.
Got it.
I would not come home. Oh, I got a girlfriend. Oh, you do? I'm gonna go to Christmas with their family. You what? No, that could be really a
Got it.
mind blower when that's not been the way at all. And a lot of people might say this is a strange conversation. It is important conversation because there has to be a level of communication. Otherwise, there's fallout, there's damage. And this is a remarkable story of highs and massive lows that I've learned to what? Come out the other end and still walk down the road and know my mom are hand in hand. That my brother is all right. I'll see him one day and I'll tell him that, hey man, I never was that far away. But it wasn't always understood, when you're that close. And Tim knows that, I mean, we were real close. Mom, brother, and me, inseparable. It's hard when girls come in. And I know it sounds weird. I totally agree that it sounds like it's not normal. I'm not saying it is, but it was part of. See, I'm not a your show. I'm not your show to be real and honest. I'm not. I am nothing high. No one's going to what come and tell me what a lousy person I am. I know the things I've done well and the things I could have done better, and I'm facing those things with my God each day before my last day on earth, and that's cool with me. I'll handle it. I'll handle it.
Please tell us about your NFL career. I believe you played for 11 years, and it included the Colts, the Chargers, and Green Bay. Am I missing one? Tell us about each team and what your experience was like.
I went to Indianapolis and started my rookie year with the Colts, and was amazed with the amount of attention that came as rookie first team all rookie, fan favorite of Indianapolis in 1984. I mean, all these teams were like, what? And had leading the team in defensive tackles, uh, from a defensive lineman. I had 4 sacks, but the point that I was involved in almost every play. I was very active. Um, uh, and then what happens to a lot of us is, year 2, I got hurt, and they eventually said, "Hey, what's best for Blaise is we put him on IR." Now the Colts, remember, the Colts went through 3 head coaches, new ones in 3 years. 3 in 3 years. My first year coach was Frank Kush out of Arizona. He was a military man. He was a no nonsense. Hey, we love guys like Blaise Winter. He was all about what? You work and you don't break. And the last one standing is the guy I want. The problem is, with that long of a football season, there's going to be things that happen to people if you don't take care of them. And with Frank Kush, eventually he would be replaced by um, Steve Sitwell, and then eventually with Rod Donhauer. And you can only imagine with 3 head coaches. Oh, I must have also had 3 new defensive line coaches. No, I have 4 in 3 years. 4 that all wanted something different. On top of having injury, they were more what likely to write you off because you weren't around and they didn't know you anyway. They only knew from the film from a year ago, and they knew, hey, he's good, he's tough, he works hard, but hey, I'm going to keep moving forward. And eventually, the coach that was there, coach of the D line my rookie year, Gunther Cunningham, went to San Diego. So in my 3rd year with the Colts, I got another injury early. I was ready to come back about 3-4 weeks into the season. And as soon as I came in back into the active roster, they cut me. So a week or 2 later, they bring me to San Diego, where Gunther Cunningham had resurfaced as a D-line coach with the Chargers. I would walk into a locker room, all right, with guys like Donnie Mason, Tim, people like Drew Kissinger out of Syracuse, people like Dennis McKnight, quarterbacks like Dan Fouts, and so on. Joyner, Winslow, Ed White. This is a legendary football team that's about to what? All go their own ways. Coached by who? Don Coryell. I would play the last part of the season, Now we're in 1987. I crossed the line. I played. My whole career would rebound into something remarkable, and I would find myself in 1988 at Green Bay, where I would start for 4 years, and eventually re-signed with the Chargers and Bobby Ross in '92, '3, and '4, and eventually go to a Super Bowl with them and lose to the 49ers. And then I was physically about done. So that's the timeline. There's a lot that happened in that during those 10, 11, 12 years. But I survived. And Tim was surviving at Atlanta, and Jamie was surviving at the Raiders, and Billy was floating around a little bit with, I think, the Jets and a few others. And we were all surviving, man. And every once in a while we would bump into each other, from college, and the four-wheel drive would, find you were on one side of the field, I was on the other, living a dream, trying to survive it. But the NFL is a tough place. It's a tough place. It's incredibly challenging physically, day in and day out, because these are in the elite. And I'm glad that I had a chance to be with some remarkable coaches. Gunter saved me to go on to the Chargers. Meeting Coryell and those people gave me new life. And when they traded me to Green Bay, Great Blaise ended up being my D-line coach. And Great Blaise said, hey, you have no idea how good you could be. And I was pretty beat up by then mentally, trying to hold on. And all of a sudden in Green Bay, I flourish in those years that I'm there. I'm like, I'm a superstar there. I'm starting, playing, productive. And it was a relationship with Great Blaise that was as good as you can imagine. And when things changed there is when, I was a free agent and I re-signed with Chargers and Bobby Ross, and who was the D-line coach in 1992 with the Chargers. There he was again, Tim, George O'Leary. Yep. There's a big reason why, man, that man has been so important to my life. And he, again, told me what I had to do, not do, and it was so comfortable. And a guy like Bobby Ross, who I just saw the other day up in Virginia, these are people that love people like me. And I was comfortable around O'Leary because I knew what he wanted. And Bobby Ross would whisper in my ear, you know who's with you over there on the D-line in San Diego in 1992? I said, yeah, I know who they are. Name them. I said, well, there's Leslie O'Neal, out of where? Arkansas, first rounder. Who's on the other side? Burt Grossman out of Pittsburgh, first rounder. Who's in the middle with you? George Thornton. Eventually it would be Sean Lee. High round draft choice, third rounder. Now you're there also. You know what your job is? I said, Coach, I don't know what you're getting at. Your job is to keep these people straight. Keep these people playing the way they should be playing, because every time they turn around, they're going to see you busting your ass. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that's how it really was even at Syracuse to a certain degree. Right, Tim? It was that way at Syracuse to a certain degree. And who was there making me feel comfortable, like, hey, man, do what you're going to do. George O'Leary. Forever grateful, man. What a journey. What amazing timing of my life, going from one place to another. Oh, and then I tried to recover and make a hit with Buffalo, but never was able to run good enough anymore. And I was broken by then, physically broken. And Tim, you know that feeling, man. That's a horrible feeling of feeling somewhat unable. when you've been able your whole life to overcome whatever might be in your way.
Dad, cut me off whenever you're ready. I just Googled four-wheel drive, and one of the first things that comes up is an article from 1983. It says, it's titled, Hell Freezes Over in Syracuse. Orange defensive line humbles BC. And it talks about how Doug Flutie was totally kept in check. It's from 1983. I don't know how they have it, but
it was a turning point because that's when the program came out with us on the program. And then that's when the whole thing became a national thing because we were playing better and better football, working our way back into respectability with Coach Mack. And, it was a program in a Jeep, that picture. And then there was a domination of Doug Flutie beating BC, which was supposed to tear us apart, led by what? The four-wheel drive. Now all of a sudden what? It's the household name and our last name in the years too. Hey, we got to play what? Oliver Luck. There you go. We'll see if that was pure luck. And what did we find out, Tim? It wasn't pure luck at all. We beat that crap out of Oliver Luck, and we beat West Virginia to become at least the first winning season in many, many years. We all thought maybe a bowl game, like in this day and age, we would have went to a bowl, but we never went to one. But it was a time to say we're turning this thing around. And many years later, Coach Matt would bring me in to talk to the team, like Tim, and make sure there was a point of what. Then these are the guys that started this chain reaction for us to become, as good as we were in the 80s. These were the people. And he would point at people like, myself and Tim and Jamie and Billy and, hey, it starts with other people, so don't forget that. And that's why, to this day, I'm sorry to repeat it, but we have the right retiree of that number 72. That's forever what? Etched in stone in that stadium at Syracuse University. I don't want that for me behind Tim Green, man. I'm not Billy. I'm not Jamie. I'm not you at all, Tim. I don't want to be you. You're special in your own way. The bottom line is there's four guys that made a statement about unity in football and about expertise, led by the rather amazing coach that went on to be successful over 40 years in the D1 level, including the pro level at San Diego and at Minnesota. So I think there should be a chance to say to a team, hey, look, we have Dwight Freeney here. Yeah, that's great. He's an awesome player, one of the best players that ever played. But hey, Dwight, go out there and play football alone. Go play alone in that D line. Go ahead. Just you alone in the middle. Or anywhere you want to line up. Go play. Go. Art Monk, you're the only receiver. No other receivers allowed on the field. Let's see how well he does. I mean, Tim's one of the first guys to say what? Without Blaise Winter, without Billy drawing two, we would have never had one-on-ones. We would have never had one-on-ones. And vice versa. I don't have one-on-ones unless Timmy draws two. And that's how it was. And that is the conversation in a selfish day and age that needs to be illustrated. Because it is a rather selfish day and age. I live in Florida. I go to high school games. I watch young players. I train young players. And what do I see? Hey, you see how I did? And it's all about I. There's selfies being taken. There's highlight videos. The bottom line, man, is, hey, this is a team sport. Watch the team that wins the whole thing at the end of the year in the NCAA. It won't be an I-oriented team. It will be a we team. And that's the only reason we had a little success is that there's a group of people beyond even the four-wheel drive that made statements to the world and to one another. And that was very powerful. Very powerful. It wasn't just say it but not do it. It was more about do it and then shut up.
How did you meet your wife during that journey?
I met my wife. I was driving on my day off. You know that day off, right, Tim? You know that day off on a Tuesday. That's when we had our day off, Tuesday. I needed a haircut. So I went around town in my Corvette, and I was proud of that because it had a personalized license plate. I was getting way too full of myself, if you know what I mean. But it was what it was. I had a black vet, personalized license plate, driving around the interstate around Indianapolis, and I decided on the south side, I'm going to go to get my hair cut. I'm just listening to music, Bruce Springsteen real loud or whatever's on the radio, and enjoy rock and roll, right, Tim? Enjoy rock and roll music. Amen to that. And um, I went into the mall, I went into the hair salon, and I sat down in a chair, and this beautiful blonde comes up behind me and starts snipping away. And I'm like, I don't even care about the haircut anymore. I'm just checking her out in the mirror. I'm trying not to be what? Foolish and, you know, hey, would you like to grab a bit to eat after? Not one word said. Not one word said. And now the whole thing is all done. The hair looks great. I kind of walk over to the cash register and pay her. And she says on the way over, yeah, sure I will. And you know what I said, Tim? Oh my God, shoot me. I said to her, so you know who I am. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But I said it, I said, you know who I am? No, should I? So you don't know who I am? No, who are you? And I said, I play for the Colts. Good for you. And I said, so you want to go eat? I would love to if you want to. I'm off tomorrow. And we went to Chinese food, and I met my star, and she's my rock. You know how that is, Tim, Troy. My rock. She's been on my bedside with a brain tumor. She's been on my right side, my left side. She's been between my legs. She has been on my back. She has been everywhere it needs to be. And I just keep on waiting for her to leave because I'm not always the greatest guy to be around. And she just keeps smiling and keeps on giving love. And she's a wonderful mom and a wonderful, wonderful wife. And I could not ask for a better person in my life. And I can't believe it all came from a salon on the south side of Indianapolis. And she's never missed a game in my career. And once we hooked up, never missed a game. And amazing woman. Angie's an amazing woman. Amazing woman. Really is. He deserves better. A lot better. Tim, I'm sure your wife deserves a lot better too. Oh, I love her to death, man. She's the best.
Tell us about your brain tumor. That must have been a scary time in your life.
I was in 2017. My wife Angie saw me laying around a lot, which is not really me. She saw me going to the bathroom a lot throughout the night. She saw me sweating one minute and then freezing the next, like I had the flu. And she said, there's something wrong with you. And I said, I'm old, I'm beat up. I'm not going to a doctor. And, it's almost like when you and I were on the dock and you spoke to him about your hands. And you sort of like, there's something going on, but you sort of push it aside. It's not an urgent thing. Well, I'm laying there. I'm just not feeling good. And It's not urgent to me. I'm still breathing. And my wife says, there's something wrong with you, man. And I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, I want you to go to a doctor. You need to figure out what's going on. And I kept telling her, I'm old, I'm beat up. I've been fighting my whole life, physically, mentally. And I'm just, I'll be all right. And she said, well, I need you to do this for me, and you're going to. So I went to a doctor, and they put me through an MRI, and they came in the room, and they said, you have a brain tumor. And then they advised that I go up to Jacksonville, Mayo. I met my neurosurgeon who would adjust the terminology a little bit and say to me, now picture this neurosurgeon, I just have been diagnosed with a pituitary tumor, and I went to another doctor in Orlando, and he says it's cancer and we need to have it out by Wednesday, and this was Thursday. And now Friday of a 3 days March, I'm at Mayo. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Pituitary cancer, now what? And this neurosurgeon walks in, and he has muscles. I mean, he's about 5'7", and he's stacked, and I'm not sure what country he's from. And he looks at the information. He spends about 5 hours with me and his team, and he says, "Here's the first thing: you don't have cancer. This is a craniopharyngioma. It is a bad tumor, yes, but we're going to manage it, and you're going to be just fine." And we haven't heard much of that fine stuff for a couple of days. It's sort of a whirlwind. Like a brain tumor? What? Anyway, we managed it for about a year with different medicines, and it's just kept on growing. My symptoms were getting worse, and he eventually said, it's time. And what are we going to do? You're going to open my head up? No, I'm going to go through your nose. What? And remove this? Yes. So I went through the whole team at Mayo in Jacksonville. What a group of people. And they poked and probed me and set me up in November, whatever day it was, in November of 2017. They go through the nose and they remove most of this, if not all. Always a worry about some of it left there. And 3 weeks later, after the surgery, I wake up in the hospital looking at who? Angie. And I say, how was everything? And she says, and my oldest son, Cordell, was right near her. Wow, you feel all right? I say, Ashley, I feel pretty good. How was everything? And my wife says, so you're feeling all right? I was worried. This is the after surgery. I wake up 3 weeks later, and my wife is looking at me, asking me, so you feel fine? And my son, oldest son, Cordell, says he has no idea what day it is. And I thought it was 3 days, 3 days later after the surgery, because he said I would be sedated for a few days. So when I said, yeah, I do. It's probably November 17th I had it. It's 20th. And my wife looks at me and said, no, it's December 12th. 3 weeks, whatever that period is. And I said, what? What? What's wrong with me? You were flatlined twice. You were resuscitated, cold blue, back to life twice. What's wrong? I feel pretty good. You came down with spinal meningitis. And the chance of survival is less than 1% after a brain surgery. And I'm there, and I'm right before your eyes here now, man. And my wife, she remembers everything, man. And the funny, not funny, the real part of the story is this. The real part of the story is this. The one who suffered the most, believe it or not, wasn't me. Who was it, Troy?
Wife.
The nightmare she had, how she saw my head. She has pictures that I will look at. I mean, they are. My head was swollen. I mean, I don't think a person could swell like that. And it was it was nasty how I looked laying there with tubes and wires, and I'm like, but I feel fine. And everyone that was there said, "So normally you don't walk away from this." And it took me about a year and a half to get my mobility back, all my clear thoughts back, and go back to living life hard and steady. And it was, it's one of those things that we don't want to deal with alone or with the family, but you sometimes do. My good friend Brett Favre has come down with what? Parkinson's. My one of my best brothers, Tim, is fighting with his ALS, and you don't want any of this stuff to happen, occur, be a part of your life, your family's life, and all we could do is what? Live to glorify our God and show courage in the face of adversity, and that's what I did. And yeah, Angie was my sons, my family was there every step of the way, so I'm very thankful for that.
Do you remember anything about that time? Do you have any foggy memories of being in the hospital
No.
or the surgery at all?
I remember just laying there and then waking up I guess I don't remember anything in those 3 weeks that I was out.
Since your NFL career ended, you have motivated kids and coaches with your public speaking, and you coached for a year at the University of Central Florida, where you met Troy and kept an eye on him for me. Thank you for that. My question for you is this: do you ever see some kid who reminds you of yourself a lifetime ago, and do you ever pull that kid off to the side and have some special words of encouragement for him?
To answer the question, I really, to be humbly grounded in this answer, I really haven't seen people like me. I want to make sure people understand that that's not at all coming from a arrogant position. That comes from a position of I want better for people. I want to see better in everyone that I see in myself. There's a lot of room for improvement in myself to this day, and that fight continues. If today's to be the last day, so be it. Will you fight? Fight I will. That is a creed I live by. If today's to be the last day, so be it. Will you fight? Fight I will. If I'm going to be asked, will you fight? I'm going to answer, fight I will, because I have a lot more to do. So seeing people and judging them to be, oh, he's like me, maybe is unfair to them. Every one of us has their own identity. We have our own fingerprint. So, are the components useful? Yeah, if you're a fighter, meaning willing to get bloody for what you love, then you'll probably get a little bit more of what you want in life. It is a competitive world. You better learn to love competition. I mean, how many books have you written now, Tim, that are bestsellers? How many books have you written? I mean, what is it, 70, 60? I mean, let's be real, man. I mean, um, there's going to be more, but um, from the eyes and ears and souls of each of us, there's evaluations that nobody will ever get close to that we judge ourselves with. And so I'm very glad and happy that I have been influenced, but never want to stamp somebody with, oh, he's just like me. I had a father tell a son, you're just like Blaise. And I said, please don't do that to him. He's not at all like me. He's his own person. So amen to that.
Blaise, if there is a coach or teacher listening to this podcast who wants you to speak to their school or team, how could they get in touch with you?
I will speak to any school, any group that needs me. All I want is you to put me on a plane, feed me, or in a hotel if I have to stay for a night, and I will do it with a smile and with all my heart and soul. I will work to impact lives. And, I am everywhere on Google, just like you are, Tim, and Troy. And so people can find me through, those memes. My email's there and, my phone number and all those things. So it's really easy to sort of find the way to me. And I mean what I just said. I mean, you want to have somebody who's lived it, be at your football camp and talk to those kids. I will. If you're saying, well, we're in Pennsylvania, fly me there, put me up for the night, fly me home, and I'll give you everything I've got during the time that I'm there. And, well, how much it cost? Have I asked you for a dime? Fly me there, pay for the flight, pay for the food, pay for the hotel, fly me home, and I'll give you everything I got. Well, how much money? Let me tell you again, this is where I'm at in my life. I don't need to take a dime more from anybody else. And that's not because I'm wealthy. It's because it's so important to me to impact lives that to take money and hear a no as a possible answer is a absolute disgrace to what I stand for.
Part of this podcast is that we try to raise money and awareness for ALS research. The other part is that I wanted to try to talk about religion in each episode. It's easy to do with you because I know you're also passionate about it. In some ways, I was saved because of my diagnosis. It has turned my worst nightmare into a blessing that I thank God for. When and how did you come to Christ?
It started, believe it or not, when my mom handed me off to a gentleman near where I was growing up in South New York. I was handed off to him because I wanted to become a better athlete. Little did I know what a Christian he was and what a believer he would be. And that man taught me in the gym. And then he started talking to me and teaching me outside the gym. His name is Jose St. Victor. Believe it or not, I would find out years later that he went to Syracuse University. But I would like to say this. Jose St. Victor has not left my side since I met him in ninth grade. There hasn't been one day, and people don't believe this, but I can send it to you. There hasn't been one day from ninth grade to today that he hasn't reached out to communicate God's love to me. Along this journey of this many years, I fell out twice. I fell out of believing in every aspect. Not only did Jose step in, but the lady down the hallway, Angie, stepped in. And she said, you don't believe that, and we're not going to let you fall off the earth. And I said, you don't understand. He said, stop saying that. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to live it. I'm going to breathe it. I'm going to fill your whole soul with it. And that lady did it, and Jose St. Victor did it. He did it up to this morning. Only recently, I thought I was going off the deep end again. I was challenged. I was questioning because of the ugliness I saw in the world. I mean, the world is in chaos. Ugliness at the restaurant, ugliness in the parking lot, ugliness. And I'm like, man, hurt in my own son's life. And I'm like, what? There's so much silence and there's so much quiet now in my life now that I'm retired. There's so much quiet. And my interpretation of it was wrong, but there they were, Angie and Jose St. Victor, who has never left my side. And before there was phones, it was calls. Before there was, after that, it was flip phone calls. Then it was text messages. And then it was computer messages. And it's just amazing what happens when you have support, right, Tim? When you have support. And you have others that guide you through this challenging thought of, is there really a God? Is there really? I know without a doubt there is. I know without a question where I'm going. And I know what I'm tempted to be each and every day. And I have to fight those temptations and try to sin less. But together, man, accountability goes up. I got to be at my best for my brother Tim and for you, Troy. I got to be at my best. And I'm not talking about playing football. We're way beyond that, aren't we, Tim? Way beyond that. Well, I'm talking about being your best for your creator. Because before you know it, we're going to be going to see him and meet him. And it's an ongoing process and an ongoing part of the journey that will have shades of color. But there's going to be a very happy ending. And I'm going to hold true to what my mom would say. You're never alone. Even when I'm not here, you're never alone. And I truly believe that. Truly, truly, deeply believe that. So I'm learning about my faith each day. I'm learning from people like Jose, who still is teaching me. I mean, you look up that dude, Jose St. Victor. Oh my, what would I be without him? Or the lady down the hall. Are you right there, Tim? I'm very fortunate. And we need, as a society, to bring the Lord back into our lives, into our everyday purpose while we're here, beyond the obvious. And that purpose beyond the obvious came from my father's words when he was in rage. And I could never understand it because I was angry and hurt. And think about that. Everything you do, have a purpose beyond the obvious for doing it. And finally, Jose explained it to me. Hey, you're serving God. Are you doing that when you play football? Are you doing that when you're raising your children? So it's a deep, deep subject matter, but I'm glad there's continued light in my life.
I know you guys have two sons and that you are infinitely proud of them. Could you please tell us a little bit about them?
Well, I have an older son, 28, who's a singer-songwriter. He's a passionate person with a old soul, meaning he seems to navigate life from a position that is somewhat similar to those many, many, many years ago. He's an artist. He is a master of singing and songwriting. He has deep thoughts, deeper than you would ever believe. He lives a life of poverty in the music business. Um, he lives in a van. He has for years, and he plays all over this country, alone as a solo artist, as well as a in a band, his band. And he is working on a new album, his second album, and he just came off of an amazing tour last year where he played up in Sturgis, and he's played at Summerfest and other places, Daytona, other, all over the country, and with some amazing people. I saw him the other day down with uh, Billy Ray, Billy Bob Thornton. Billy Bob Thornton, and he was hanging out with Randy Travis. What? I mean, it's just he's like he's around. He's in this lifestyle that is rather different than I'm used to. And but he's many times you'll find him at, sharing posts from a museum or from an art gallery. It's sort of like you're 1 minute with a celebrity superstar, mega star, and another minute you're alone at an art fair. He's such a mystery, but that's part of him being such a great musician. My younger son Donovan is a guy who knows how to grind. He's the large guy in the family, Troy and Tim. Donovan is 6'6". He was a great athlete in high school, and he has pursued the plumbing field. He lives in Florida still. Cordell lives all over the country, primarily in Nashville. And am I proud of him? Yeah. Am I pushing him constantly? Yeah, just the way I am. I guess I take after my father that way and always point out, hey, you could be better. And but I think my wife has really we've established a pretty decent family. And our two sons, I think, are homebodies. And I know they're both being challenged by the current situation that we're in with the economy, but I think if they keep working hard, that there'll be a nice bright light at the end of the fight. The R will be raised. That's what I believe. So I thank you very much for asking about them, because they do mean the world to me.
Now on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
Well, I know you want rapid fire. Oh my, that's almost impossible for me. Oh my Lord, rapid fire. The thing that came into my mind: birth of my children, marriage to my wife, being drafted in the NFL. Sometimes it's just as simple as breathing fresh air. I mean, getting outside and just sort of standing and realizing I've come to this point. So there's so much there. George O'Leary, Tim Green, Billy Penn. I mean, it's so unfair in so many words, but I try.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
I think, people not quite understanding what I'm made of. Judgment. And judgment never ends. People have a tendency to be masters at judgment. So I think people judging me is constantly I have to constantly fight what my reaction is. I'm not facing an offensive lineman, so I have to what? Knock him over. So I have to learn to interpret him the right way.
What are you most excited about?
I'm excited for moments with my wife in parts of the world that have never been seen by us.
Next one. What advice would you give your younger self?
Patience. Be a little more patient.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
I guess you should ask me, will you fight? And then I respond. So you go ahead and ask me, will you fight?
Will you fight?
Fight, I will.
That's awesome. Coach, thanks so much for being on the podcast. And at the end of every episode, I ask every guest, we didn't want it to be just about football or just about ALS or just about writing books or religion or any of that. So we ask everybody at the end, who are a couple people that you know personally that you think we should try to have on the show?
Well, have you had George?
Not yet.
Oh, you're gonna have George. I think you should have Jose St. Victor on. I really do. I think Jose is a remarkable man with faith and life. A remarkable man. And if you need to get in touch with him, I think he should be on the show. I'll always feed you a few people along the way for sure if you want that, because
Definitely.
I think there are some people that you don't know them very well, but they are rather remarkable to listen to.
Blaise Winter, your life has been the epitome of resilience, perseverance, courage, and toughness. You are and continue to be an inspiration to everyone whom you come into contact with. God bless you and your family, and thank you again for sharing your story with us, my brother.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Tim, I love you, brother. I love you, and I always will. I'm always here for you and the family, and I'm going to keep fighting. Stay strong.
Thanks, Coach.
Barkley Damon LLP is proud to be the law firm sponsor of Tim Green's podcast, Nothing Left Unsaid. For more on Barkley Damon's team of nearly 300 attorneys with regional, national, and global reach from our offices across the northeastern U.S., Washington, D.C., and Toronto, go to barclaydamon.com. I want to thank my partners at Barkley Damon for supporting this podcast, and of course 11 Labs for their incredible technology. If you liked today's episode, a free way to support the podcast is to subscribe and share it with friends. Thank you. A significant amount of these sponsorships go to tackleals.com. For cutting-edge ALS research at Massachusetts General Hospital, if you want to make a contribution, go to tackleals.com.